God leaves us speechless. Amen. What a beautiful song. Would you turn with me to the book of James? James chapter 1, verses 12 through the A portion of the 17th verse. James chapter 1, starting at the 12th verse. And it reads, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. When tempted, no one should say, 'God is tempting me.' For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desires and enticed. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. Do not be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. Every good and perfect gift is from above." You may be seated. Do not be deceived. Every good and perfect gift is from above. My brothers and sisters, I'd like to talk briefly from the thought this morning of gifts from God. Gifts from God. Our key verse is that 17th verse where it says, "Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, and who does not change like shifting shadows." Now, I know all of us during this season of Christmas and New Year's, we all can be honest. We get excited about giving and receiving gifts. Can I get a witness? I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I love giving gifts, but I must testify, I like receiving gifts too. I mean, I like receiving gifts. I mean, now sometimes you get gifts that are good, and sometimes gifts that are not so good. You know, now all of us, if we tell the truth, we want some good gifts. Can I get a witness? Now I know some of y'all, when you get to a point you really want to take care of other people and you're not looking for it. But if they're going to give you one, at least it could be a good one. Can I get a witness? Now the reality, y'all, we really can't tell whether or not a gift is good until we open it. Now, there are sometimes, though, when we know that the gift is good before we open it. Not because we know what's in it, but when we know who it came from. Because, they got some folk, when you're doing the gift exchange, you trying to say, "Lord, who got my name?" Oh, you know how it is, because you won't know who to pull your name. Because there's certain people, when they get your name, you get excited because they're known for good gifts. Can I get a witness? Yeah. See, in my house, my daughters like to give good gifts, y'all. Yeah, they like to give gifts. Now the reality, I got two daughters, but the one who I really look for a gift from is Janelle. Yeah, because, like I said, they both have a reputation of good gifts, but Janelle the only one who has the resources and the reputation to give good gifts. So when I see a gift from her, I get excited before I see what's in it because of the reputation and what I know about her resources. Y'all, that's what James was trying to tell us in this text, y'all. When he said every good and perfect gift comes from God, you ought to know it's good because of his reputation, y'all. Yeah, because God is known for giving good gifts, y'all. And you ought to know that it's good not only because of his reputation, you ought to know because of his resources, y'all. The cattle upon 1,000 hills belong to him, y'all. He controls every aspect of this world, this universe, and everything he created, y'all. So you ought to know when you get a gift from God that it's going to be good because who it came from. See, in this text, James is the half-brother of Jesus. And this whole book of James is really a book of wisdom and instruction for us. He was speaking to early Jewish believers, and he was trying to get them to really understand a focus on living wise and godly behavior. He wanted them to really understand that there's a need for us to live obedient lives and a need to walk according to God's will and his word. And how many folk know we still need that today? Because there's a whole lot of folk who say they love God, but they don't walk like God. Whole lot of folks say they belong to God, but they don't look like him, y'all. My brothers and sisters, if you belong to God, we ought to be able to tell by how you act, y'all. If you love God, you wouldn't have to tell anybody about your mouth. Your actions ought to be evident, my brothers and sisters. In conjunction to this introduction to this text, he started in his first chapter talking about trials and tribulation. And then James reminds us that every good and perfect gift comes from God. Now, in that translation, good and perfect gift, it uses two different words for gift. One of them is the act of giving, the one is the gift itself. And what he was trying to really tell us is that there's some good gifts and there's some perfect gifts. A good gift is something you're going to like automatically. It's $1,000. That's a good gift. Now, a perfect gift may not look good to you, but it's good for you. See, God gives us good and perfect gifts. See, trials and tribulations are perfect gifts, y'all. They don't feel good, but they're perfect. You know the thing about perfect gifts? They're designed just for you. God made us, and he knows all about us. And he gives us some gifts that are just for us. They may not look good to us, but how many folk know they'll be good for us? Because he said in all things, God works together for the good of those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. Now, my brothers and sisters, this grown folk territory, because folk don't like to receive stuff that don't look good. Folk don't like to receive it. He started off, he said, look, you got to count this all joy when you fall into diverse temptation, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance, and let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. My brothers and sisters, the challenge for us is we got to learn to unwrap some perfect gifts. We got to learn to unwrap the perfect gift. They may not look good, but you got to unwrap them so that they can be good. God's reputation and his resources are behind it. God gives us exactly what we need. Do you think God falls short in giving you what you need? Does God have a reputation of not giving you what you need? He gave us his only son. How much more of a reputation of giving does he need? He has the resources to do what he needs. Now, here's the hard part when we're dealing with these gifts that don't look so good initially. God purposes trials to occur, and in them, he also allows some temptations to happen. But he promised y'all not to allow more than any believer can handle or ever deal with. Anybody grew up and say, they say, the Lord don't put no more on you than you could bear. In Scripture, 1 Corinthians 10 and 13, it says, God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you're tempted, he also what? Provide a way out. So you got to understand now there's trials and temptations. Now God gives us trials and tests. But he don't tempt us, y'all. That's what the text told us. He don't tempt us. The temptation comes because of our evil flesh and the enemy. The lust of the flesh are things that tempt us, and the devil will tempt. God won't tempt us. You know the difference between a test and temptation. A test is designed to prove what's right. Temptation is designed to get you to do something wrong. God will test you, but he'll never tempt you. So you got to understand why you're going through. But the challenge we face sometimes, when we're going through trials, how many folk know temptations show up? Oh, yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. Yeah, temptation is on the other side of trials. It's the same coin. You ever notice when you're going through something you've been delivered from or you done got out of, pop back up? Some of you say you wasn't going to do no more while you're having hard times. All of a sudden, it seemed like it made good sense to do. My brothers and sisters, I want to talk today about how to handle gifts that don't seem good, but that will be good. Now y'all know, you ever got a gift and you open it and you look on the box and see that it's going to be trouble because there's a sticker that said assembly is required. Come on, how many folk, when you see that, you're like, oh, Lord. If you got kids and you're like me and you're not mechanically inclined, I'm like, why would people buy something that ain't put together? Yo, that's what happens when we go through trials. We know God is good, but we got to remember that we could get some good out of it, but there's some assembly required. It takes some work. James told us in verse 13, it said, blessed is the man who perseveres under trials, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord promised to those who love him. My brothers and sisters, look at somebody and say, it takes some work. There's somebody right now been holding a perfect gift. It comes in the form of trials and tribulations. And you're wondering why you have to deal with what you got. In fact, you've been trying to say that it don't belong to you. You've been giving the devil credit for what God has blessed you with. You better stop right now and say, oh, wait a minute. It looks like a gift. It looks like a gift. Sometimes we go through some stuff, y'all, and we want to rebuke the devil for what God has allowed to happen in our life because it's designed to make us better. You know when it tell us to persevere is because what we're going through going to be severe. Per means just to go through. So how you going to persevere if you don't go through severe stuff? My brothers and sisters, I come by to tell us we got to learn how to handle these gifts because they're perfect, but there's some assembly required. Can I give you 3 things that we need to do to handle these gifts and get out the way? The first thing is you can't re-gift it. You can't re-gift it. You can't ignore it. You got to learn to put it together. You can't re-gift it. Yo, we have a tendency to want to give stuff away that we don't like. Y'all know how it is. Some of y'all got some gift this year. And you already made up your mind. I ain't going to open it. I'm going to get it to somebody else. Because you don't want it. You don't like it. And so you done made up your mind, you're going to give it away. Now, we laugh about that, about these Christmas gifts. But some of us, when we go through trials that make us sad and make us angry and make us discouraged, you know what we do? We re-gift it because we pass on anger. We pass on sadness. We pass on bitterness, y'all, because we are re-gifting what we're going through. I come by to tell you that every good and perfect gift comes from God, and you can't re-gift it. My brothers and sisters, you got to deal with it. You got to remember in the midst of going through this that God is blessing me. We got to be careful, y'all, because even in the church, hurt people. That's just folk re-gifting what they're going through. My brothers and sisters, I come by to tell you that you can't re-gift it. It's a perfect gift for you. Now, here's a sad reality. How bad is it for me to miss the gift God has for me and then also hurt you? That's a double loss. I miss what God had for me in it. You got to learn to look at things differently. You got to look at it when the trial comes, knowing that it comes from God. That's what James said when he came out in that 16th verse. He said, do not be deceived. Because we have a tendency to think that God is not with us. That's why I said, don't be deceived. Every good and perfect gift comes from God. Because a lot of folk been walking around here thinking that they've been plagued by the devil. And they've been deceived. God has a trial in your life, but it's not designed to tear you down. It's designed to build you up. But we got to learn to handle it, y'all. So you can't re-gift it. Look at somebody and say, you can't get out of the way. Yeah, you can't get away. Second thing is you gotta deal with it. You can't ignore it. Some folk are just gonna leave a gift right there. You don't want to deal with it. You try to ignore it. But how many folk know you can't ignore trials? James said in verse 12, blessed is the one who perseveres under trials, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life. Y'all, we have to go through it. You have to go through it. Here's the key. But you go through it following the instructions. You got to go to God. If he give you the trial, he'll give you the way out of the trial. The trials come to make us strong. Andre Crouch said it in a song and said, if I didn't have a problem, I wouldn't know that God could solve them. But through it all, I've learned to trust in Jesus. I've learned to trust in God. My brothers and sisters, I went through one of the hardest things I had to go through this past year. Man, I lost my first grandchild. Man, I was so excited. I had preached down in Lake Charles, and afterward they invited us by Marnique's dad's house, and they came out with a sign with the birth date of when the baby was going to be born. And I cried like a baby. Man, I cried. I was just so excited. I was so happy, and I was happy for them, and I was happy for me, Joe. I was like, boy, I'm going back. I'm going to get them a basketball. We're going to be playing. I can't wait. I'm getting them started early in AAU. I got everything. I got it planned. We're going to be ready. I'm going to be like Ken Samuels at a football game. You know, Ken had all his grandkids game. He take all kind of pictures. I mean, I'm ready. It was my turn. It was my turn. Y'all been watching brothers do it. It was my turn. And then Hurricane Harvey come. In the midst of all that, we way in Dallas and get a call and the baby died. Y'all, it got me. Now I preach the gospel. I'm filled with his spirit. But y'all, it hurt. Y'all, and I tried to ignore it. But how many folk know pain that you ignore don't go away? No, you know what pain that you ignore do? It pushes you towards your temptation. See, I wondered why all of a sudden I went back to overeating, y'all. See, I gained weight again during that time. Stuff I had been delivered from, I got tempted and I went back to. And I was blaming it on the temptation, but it was really rooted in my inability to deal with my trial. You can't ignore it, y'all. It wasn't until they had their memorial service. I didn't know about, doing a memorial service for a baby that was that small that you do. But I tell you, Cheryl, I'll be eternally grateful. Because when I walked into church that day and I saw how you had set everything up, right there at that time, I started to persevere. I started to deal with the hard thing I was carrying, y'all. Greg was hard, but I wasn't dealing with it. It wasn't until that day when I saw it there, I started to deal with what I had been carrying for a long time, y'all. And so right at that time, I started to come through what I had been carrying, y'all. But how many folk know whether you deal with it or not, it's still a weight, y'all? And the weight was weighing me down. It wasn't until I started to deal with it, I realized how the devil was dealing with me. I realized that my trials had pushed me to some temptation. And I realized right at that time, not only if you're going to ignore, you can't ignore it because you got to go through the trials, you got to learn to resist the temptations while you're going through. In verse 14, it said, but each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desires. Then after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it's full grown, gives birth to death. My brothers and sisters, you can't ignore it. You got to deal with it. You got to go through it, and you got to learn to resist temptation while you're going through. It don't mean it's not hard. I didn't come by to say it's easy. I come by to say you got to know who's behind it. Realize that God's reputation is behind this. So I'm fighting through, but I ain't fighting a losing battle. Joe, it's a fixed fight because I know God is able to see me through. Oh, I'm unwrapping this gift not because it's easy. I'm unwrapping it because I know there's a blessing on the other side. So you got to fight through and not go toward the temptation. You can't re-gift it. You can't ignore it. But you got to learn to assemble it. You got to learn to put it together. Now, the reality, it comes to you dismantled. It does come dismantled when you get a gift like this. It's dismantled because it's filled with discouragement. It's filled with distractions. It's filled with disillusionment. It's filled with disappointment. My brothers and sisters, it's filled with a distant feeling about a relationship from God. It comes disassembled because it's designed to separate you if you don't allow it to connect you to God more. The trial is not to push you away. It's to draw you closer. It teaches us not to depend on ourselves. It teaches us to trust in God. I'm done, but here's how you put it together. You put it together by separating it. You got to separate your trials from your temptations. You got to be able to separate. The trials are the tests. I got a bad medical report. That's a trial. I got to deal with it. I got a bad relationship issue. That's a trial. Lost my job. That's a trial. Folk giving me trouble on the job. That's a trial. My kids are not acting right. That's a trial. You got to understand trials, and you got to separate them from the temptation. The temptation is, I need a drink because the folk on my job getting on my nerves. The temptation is, Lord, I ain't got enough to pay these bills. I'm going to buy me something anyway. No sense. I ain't got enough money anyway. I'm going to go buy me something. No, you know what? Oh, man, I'm stressed. I'm going to swing by the donut shop and get me 6 hot glaze and a large milk. Especially when the light is on. That's temptation. Temptations are not from God. You got to learn to separate them. You got to learn to resist the temptation, but you got to deal with the trials. You got to separate them and then ask God. Here's the key when you're dealing with a trial. People mean well, but they don't know how to tell you how to deal with a trial. Cheryl, the reason why you blessed me, you didn't tell me what to deal with. You didn't tell me how to feel. You ain't tell me none of that. You just showed me that God loved this child and he loved us. Just by the display of the cross and all of the gifts, it made me realize that God was still in control. See, a lot of times folk try to tell you some stuff, but you can't deal with your trials based on what folks say. Verse 5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God. You got to pray when you're going through trials because God has a way of getting you through, but only God knows what you got to go through to get to what he wants you to get. So you got to pray. What God took me through may not be the same thing he's going to take Joe through. So I can't tell Joe how to go through it. I can't tell Joe who can get him through. I can't tell Joe that the Lord going to see him through. But how many folk know the way he do it for you may not be the way he do it for me? But what you got to testify to is the fact that God will see you through. So if anyone lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt. You got to know that God will see you through. You don't want to be double-minded in what you do. You got to know that God got a way going through this. I don't know how he's seeing me through, but I know God will see me through. My brothers and sisters, I come by to tell you now, as we close this year out, there's some folk who got some stuff you're going through. And there's some stuff you got to deal with. There's trials and there's tribulations. But I come by to tell you, don't waste no gift, because God gives some good gifts, y'all. And every good and perfect gift comes from God. I got to tell you, as much as I had a hard time by losing my grandchild, y'all, did y'all see last Sunday, y'all, the gift that God gave my son in the midst of losing his grandchild? I seen him stand like he never stand. I seen him trust God like he never trust God, y'all. And all of that happened because he had to go through some stuff, y'all. I don't know why God does what he does, but you can trust God in what he's doing. God's got something up for you, my brothers and sisters. As you go through your trials, don't quit on God, because he won't quit on you. But you got to learn to press through, y'all. Every time you're fighting through, you got to realize, wait a minute, this is from God. And every good and perfect gift, it comes from God. And God's got a way of seeing us through. Y'all don't seem like you're getting it. I got an illustration for you, and I got to let you go. I told y'all about Mike Thibodeau. Mike Thibodeau, when I went to visit him, he's laying there and he's paralyzed. He can't move his arms. He can't move his legs. All he could do is move his head. In the midst of talking to Mike, we went up the other day and we brought up something to help him along the way financially. And he sat there and said, man, I thank God for y'all. He said, I lay here. He said, you know what? When I lay down in this bed, he said, you know the one thing I regret? He said, man, I don't regret that I'm going through this. I don't regret that I'm having it, because I realized that I told God I wanted to learn to trust him more. I told God that I wanted to draw closer to him. He said, I didn't know how I was going to get through this. But with tears running down his eyes, he said, I didn't ask y'all to do nothing for me. Y'all volunteered, and I know it was God. He said, so as I lay down in this bed with tears running down his eyes, he said, I don't regret that I can't walk. He said, you know what I regret? He said that I can't clap my hands and tell God, thank you for all that he's done. Lord, thank you for all that he brought me through. Well, Tim can't wave his hand, but I promised God that I was going to clap my hands for him. I was going to dance for him and tell the Lord, thank you for all that you've done. Every good and perfect gift, it comes from God. Don't give up on God, or he won't give up on you. It may be hard, but you gotta go through. It may be rough, but God will see you through. It may not feel good to you, but how many folk know it's good for you? God will. Yes, he will. He'll see you through. He'll see you through. He'll see you through. Anybody know that God will? I need some folk who know that God will see them through. You ought to stand on your feet. Tell somebody God will see it through. Don't give up. Unwrap the gift. God will. Yes, he will. Every good and perfect gift, it comes from God. Thank you for my hard time. Lord, thank you for my struggles. Thank you. Yeah.